The richest person in the neighborhood didn't drive a luxury car, he didn't wear designer clothes, he didn't live in the biggest house. In fact, if you walked past him on the street, you probably wouldn't look twice. He looked ordinary, average, forgettable. And that's exactly what made his story unforgettable. For years, people believed the wealthiest person in the neighborhood was someone else, the businessman with the expensive SUV, the family with the giant house, the man who wore a different luxury watch every week. They looked rich, but appearances can be expensive. Reality is often much quieter. Every morning, just before 7, an old pickup truck rolled slowly down the street. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't new. It had scratches on the doors and faded paint on the hood. Behind the wheel sat an older man named David. Most neighbors assumed he was retired. Some thought he was struggling financially. Others believed he simply couldn't afford something better. Nobody imagined he was a millionaire. David had lived in the same modest home for nearly 30 years. The roof wasn't perfect. The fence needed repairs. His lawn wasn't the greenest on the block. But the mortgage had been paid off years ago. Inside the house, there were no expensive decorations. No giant televisions. No luxury furniture. Everything had a purpose. Everything was taken care of. Nothing was purchased just to impress visitors. Every Saturday morning, David walked to the local grocery store carrying the same reusable shopping bags. He compared prices carefully. He bought what he needed, very little more. Cashiers knew him by name, not because he spent a lot, because he visited regularly. Some people quietly laughed at how careful he was with money. They didn't understand. David wasn't being cheap. He was being intentional. Years earlier, when he was in his 20s, David made a simple promise to himself. I'll spend less than I earn. It sounded ordinary, too ordinary. There was no secret investment strategy. No get rich quick plan. No lottery ticket. No inheritance. Just one simple decision, repeated consistently for decades. When David received his first paycheck, he saved part of it. When his income increased, his savings increased too. His lifestyle didn't. Every raise became another opportunity to invest, not another excuse to spend more. While friends upgraded cars, David kept driving his old truck. While coworkers moved into larger houses, David stayed where he was. While others financed furniture, vacations, and luxury items, David quietly bought index funds every month. Nobody noticed, because investing isn't exciting to watch. Compounding isn't dramatic. Progress is often invisible. Until one day. It isn't. Years passed, then decades. People around him appeared wealthier, bigger homes, luxury vacations, brand new vehicles. Every few years, David looked exactly the same. His truck got older, his clothes stayed simple, his habits never changed. Some people even felt sorry for him. One neighbor once asked, "Why don't you enjoy your money?" David smiled. "I do." The neighbor looked confused. David continued, "I just enjoy it differently." The conversation ended there, but those words stayed with the neighbor for years. One afternoon, the neighborhood gathered for a retirement celebration. Someone mentioned investments. Another person joked about needing to win the lottery before retiring. David quietly smiled. Eventually someone asked, "So David, when are you planning to retire?" He laughed softly. "I retired 6 months ago." The group looked surprised. "What? You still drive that old truck? You still shop at discount stores? You still mow your own lawn?" David nodded. "Because I enjoy those things." Curiosity spread around the room. One neighbor finally asked the question everyone was thinking. "So, how much did you actually save?" David hesitated, then answered honestly, "A little over $2 million. Silence. Nobody believed him. They thought he was joking, until he explained. 35 years of consistent investing, 35 years of avoiding unnecessary debt, 35 years of living below his means, 35 years of allowing time to do what time does best. Compound. Suddenly everything made sense. The old truck, the modest house, the careful shopping, the simple lifestyle, they weren't signs of financial failure. They were signs of financial discipline. The wealthiest man in the neighborhood had been hiding in plain sight, not because he wanted attention, because he never needed it. That realization changed how several neighbors thought about money. One family admitted they earned nearly 3 times what David had earned during most of his career. Yet they had almost no savings. Another neighbor owned luxury cars, but still carried large amounts of debt. Someone else admitted they hadn't invested anything despite earning a good salary. They all looked wealthy. David actually was. That's the difference between appearing rich and becoming wealthy. Appearing rich is immediate, wealth is patient. Appearing rich depends on spending. Wealth depends on saving and investing. Appearing rich attracts attention. Real wealth often avoids it. David later shared the biggest lesson he had learned. Money grows best when nobody is watching. At first, nobody understood. Then he explained. People celebrate promotions, new houses, luxury purchases, expensive vacations. Almost nobody celebrates automatic investments, or consistent saving, or saying no to unnecessary spending. Yet those quiet decisions often create extraordinary results. The biggest financial victories usually happen in silence. David wasn't lucky. He wasn't a genius. He wasn't born wealthy. He simply understood something many people never do. Time is more valuable than appearances. Every dollar invested had employees. Those employees worked every day, every month, every year, without asking permission, without taking vacations, without complaining. That's how wealth quietly grew. David also refused to compare himself with other people. Comparison, he believed, was one of the fastest ways to become poor. Someone would always have a bigger house, a newer car, a nicer watch. If he chased those things, he would never reach financial freedom. Instead, he competed with one person, yesterday's version of himself. That was enough. Years after retiring, David still lived the same way. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. Money had never changed who he was. It had simply given him options. The option to spend time with family, the option to travel when he wanted, the option to help others quietly, the option to sleep peacefully at night. To David, that was the real definition of wealth, not luxury, freedom. One evening, a young neighbor asked him, "If you could give me one piece of financial advice, what would it be?" David thought for a moment, then smiled. "Stop trying to look rich. Start trying to become free." The young man never forgot those words. Neither should we. Because the millionaire next door rarely looks like a millionaire. They look ordinary. They drive ordinary cars, live in ordinary homes, wear ordinary clothes. But their financial habits are extraordinary. And in the end, habits determine wealth far more than income ever will. The richest person isn't always the one who spends the most. Often, it's the one who quietly keeps the most. So now I'm curious, if financial freedom meant nobody ever knew how wealthy you were, would you still choose it? Comment below. And if you enjoy story-based personal finance, financial literacy, money mindset, and real-life wealth-building lessons, subscribe, because sometimes the greatest money stories are the ones hiding next door.